Hi, I'm Brandy. Welcome to Careers Unchecked. This is the podcast for high-achieving women who are doing well on paper, but something just doesn't feel right. Maybe you got the promotion and it feels heavier than you expected. Maybe your role keeps expanding, but your compensation just isn't. Maybe you're exhausted in a way that sleep just won't fix. Or maybe you had a quiet moment where you thought, is this actually what I want? I'm a career coach and a first-generation professional. I spent over a decade in corporate leadership, and at one point I applied to more than 250 jobs trying to figure out what work actually felt like mine. I've hired teams, built systems, burned out a few times, pivoted quietly, and rebuilt. What I've learned from my own story and from coaching hundreds of women is this: you don't need more noise. You need support, you need clarity, and you need a plan that actually fits your life. Around here, we reduce the mental load, we untangle burnout and imposter syndrome, and we build strategy that feels aligned, not performative. And we move forward in a way that's both grounded and strategic. You'll leave with practical tools, real frameworks, and perspective you can use right away, so you can stop overthinking and start making moves that feel authentic. This is Careers Unchecked. Let's get into it. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that shows up in people who care deeply about their work. Sometimes it looks like irritability. Sometimes it shows up as this quiet sense of dread on Sunday evening, if you've ever heard of Sunday scaries, that didn't used to be there. Sometimes it's disengagement or pulling back, or the strange experience of taking time to rest and realizing you're not rested and something still feels off. And if you're someone who has always been a high performer, someone people rely on, someone who takes their work seriously, this kind of exhaustion can be incredibly confusing. Because from the outside, everything might look just fine, but inside something feels heavy. And heavy is much harder to carry than busy. And I know this feeling personally. There was a point in my own career where I was so burned out that I would cry most mornings before work. Not because anything dramatic had happened that day, just because the thought of going back into the same environment again and again felt unbearable. I remember noticing the physical toll too. I would come home completely depleted. The moment I sat down on our couch, my body would quite literally just crash out. I was so exhausted. I would literally stumble into the walls in our hallway because I think I had nothing left. Eventually, I did what a lot of people do. I took some time off. I was between roles and I just checked out for 6 full weeks. And I remember thinking, okay, this is going to be the answer. I just need rest. I'm tired. But rest didn't help. And something interesting happened when I came back to work. That heaviness started creeping back in almost immediately, and even more so than it had before. And that was the moment I started realizing something really important. Sometimes the issue is not burnout alone. Sometimes it's misalignment. And this is something I see all the time with clients I work with, especially with people in leadership roles, director level professionals, nonprofit leaders, high performing corporate women who've built really successful careers on paper. They're very thoughtful, they're capable, they're dependable. They're often the people who hold things together. They manage complexity. They absorb the pressure from others. They keep teams moving forward. But over time, something starts to feel off. They're tired in a different way, not just busy tired, but heavy. And this is usually where conversations about burnout start, because the symptoms can look very similar between burnout and misalignment, and sometimes one leads to the other. You're tired, you're less patient, your motivation's gone. The work that used to feel really meaningful now just feels like a never-ending to-do list. So the natural conclusion becomes, oh my gosh, I'm just burned out, I need rest, and my body needs rest. And sometimes that's absolutely true. Rest matters, recovery matters, but sometimes, especially when someone has been in a difficult environment for a very long period of time, what they're experiencing is more than just classical burnout. It's misalignment. Misalignment between the effort you're giving and the support you're receiving, or misalignment between your values and what the role actually requires. I see that one a lot. Misalignment between who you've grown into and the version of you that the job still expects. We change over time, spoiler alert. And this is the part many people miss. You can take time off, you can rest, you can recharge, but if you return to the same conditions that created the exhaustion in the first place, that heaviness tends to come right on back. And I've seen clients come back from time off feeling even more depleted than when they left. Not because the rest didn't work, It's just that the break clarified just how unsustainable the situation had become. And when that happens, your system is giving you information. Research from the American Psychological Association defines burnout with 3 key dimensions: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and a reduced sense of personal accomplishment. But what often gets missed is that these same symptoms can also appear when someone is misaligned with their role. A study published in the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology found that person-job fit, especially around values, is a major predictor of long-term job satisfaction. When there's a gap between someone's values and what their role demands, exhaustion doesn't respond to recovery in the same way, because the root issue isn't just about being overworked. It's misalignment. And I had this conversation actually with someone earlier this week. She was describing her work environment, and all the classic warning signs were there: frustration, exhaustion, feeling like she was hitting a wall. At first glance, it sounded like burnout. But then we started talking more deeply about what was actually going on, and 3 things became really clear. Number 1, her expertise was not being valued. She had really deep experience in nonprofit work, but was not being brought into the conversations where those insights were going to make tangible differences. Second, her manager was not advocating for her in higher level discussions. So even though she had really good ideas, they weren't being carried forward because she didn't have an advocate on her side. And third, after a leadership change, the purpose that originally drew her to the work, and nonprofits, you gotta have that, it changed with the change of leadership, and she no longer felt connected to the organization or to the mission. Once we named those 3 things out loud, the situation suddenly made a lot more sense. She wasn't just burned out, she was misaligned. And so that misalignment actually led into the symptoms that she was starting to see. That clarity gave her something powerful: options. We started mapping a plan for how she could try to realign her current role while also beginning a thoughtful job search for environments where her expertise and values were better supported and aligned. And this is also where leaders and managers need to understand that they play a much bigger role than they realize. When someone on your team is struggling like this, the answer usually isn't another perk, and it's definitely not a random pizza party on a Friday to say congratulations or you're doing well. What actually helps is people feeling seen and understood. They want to feel valued in a way that resonates with them. One place leaders often get stuck is assuming appreciation looks the same for everybody. In reality, people receive recognition very differently. Some feel valued through words, others through flexibility, autonomy, support, time, tangible acknowledgement, a whole library list of different ways. But understanding how each of your team members feels genuinely appreciated will make a huge difference in their ability to be successful. If you're unsure where to start, the framework I personally use, it's called the 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. It's an online assessment. It might be a really helpful tool for you to do with your team. All of this being said, what I see over and over again is that once people feel understood, whether they're dealing with burnout, misalignment, or a mix of both, something subtle will start to shift. They'll stop assuming they just need to push harder and try to get through it. They stop believing their only options are to either quit or just endure it. And one client recently left a review that has really stayed with me. They said, "Therapy for your career is an understatement. Brandy's guidance helped me turn down the volume on my imposter syndrome voice and turn up the volume on my self-belief and strategic ability." That shift did not happen overnight, but dang, did it begin with clarity. We thought this person was burned out. They were both burned out and misaligned. And understanding what was actually happening beneath all of that exhaustion is what led to the clarity for them. This person now protects pockets of energy, makes meaningful adjustments when the warning signs are showing, sets boundaries that are realistic, and gives themselves permission to question their long-term fit without needing immediate answers. For some people, this work leads to redefining expectations inside their current role. Yes, they don't actually leave. They just rework it. For others, it leads to a thoughtful transition into something new. But one of the most powerful shifts that happens when people stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What is this exhaustion trying to tell me?" doesn't create urgency, but it opens the door to clarity. And clarity is where it tends to be far more helpful than the pressure to try and fix it today. Okay, so if you're somebody going, yep, this is me. I think I'm misaligned. I think I might be burned out. I want to get practical. Here are 3 small steps you can take this week. So first, notice your pattern of exhaustion. What is making you feel most drained? Is it after certain meetings, certain types of work, tasks that don't align with your strengths or maybe not with your values? You don't need a complicated tracking system. I just want you to start noticing what's going on. Patterns tend to reveal a lot to us. Second, ask yourself a question. If you took 2 weeks off right now and came back to the exact same conditions, would you feel restored, or would you feel that heaviness hit your shoulders almost immediately? That answer right there matters a whole heck of a lot, because if the heaviness comes back quickly, you're probably dealing with misalignment, not just burnout. And then the third thing, name one thing that has changed about your role that just hasn't quite caught up with who you are now yet. Maybe your values have shifted. Maybe your capacity has changed. Maybe you've simply just outgrown your role. You don't have to fix it this week. I just want you to name it out loud, because once you start to see that clearly, you can start to think about new alternatives. And if you're wondering whether what you're experiencing is burnout or misalignment or both or something in between, I created a short reflection quiz called Is it Burnout or Misalignment? Let me be very clear. This is not a clinical diagnosis. I am not a mental health professional. But as someone who has personally navigated burnout multiple times, I wanted a tool that helped people slow down, look at their situation more clearly, and figure it out. Burnout is hard, and trying to find the cause of it all is even harder. But you can take this quiz at talentcareercoaching.com and hopefully get some of those answers. And if you're realizing, listen, I'm going to need more support than just a quiz, I want you to know you don't have to do it alone. This kind of work is exactly what I do day in and day out. You can learn more about working together with me at talentcareercoaching.com. You can also send me a message on Instagram at talentcareercoaching or on any of our other social channels at that same handle. You are not alone in this, and you do not have to figure it out by yourself. Please remember that. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for being here on this episode of Careers Unchecked. If something from today is sitting with you and a good next step feels like taking our burnout quiz, I want you to head over to talentcareercoaching.com. This quiz is free, it's short, and it's designed to help you figure out what you're feeling is burnout, or maybe it's misalignment and something about your work is no longer a fit. Those aren't always the same thing, and it really does matter which one it is so that you can go deeper and figure out what is actually happening. Just so you know, everything else lives there too. Blog posts, past episodes, free resources, and then obviously how to book a call or work with me if that makes sense for you too. All of it is there. In the meantime, I'll see you next week.